All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Hey everybody, it is the Mark Thompson Show. Here we are. Mark is absent today, but that's okay because I'm here and Tony's here. How's it going, Tony?
Doing all right.
Yeah, I'm glad you're with me. Have you taken a walk to see the ducks lately?
I haven't hit the trail yet. I haven't had time. Been working too much.
All right. Well, welcome aboard, everybody.
Sure, they're fine.
Thank you for being here. Big show. We're going to have John Rothman in to talk about what happened with this helicopter crash in Iran and what that means for American politics. Is it the devil you know versus the devil you don't? Were we better off with the guy we had? And what does it mean moving forward in an area where things are so volatile? At 11:30, Courtney will slide in and talk to us about true crime. So looking forward to talking with her. We have Law and Disorder today. We have Stories from the Sky. So it's a full show, and I'm so glad you're with us. If you could check out themarkthompsonshow.com. That's our website, themarkthompsonshow.com. It is a crowdfunded show, so you can find the Patreon link there. You can find the PayPal link there. All of the things that we need to keep this show rolling, and we appreciate that very, very much. While I can have you thinking about the business of the day, click the like button while you're here as well. And if you haven't subscribed, do that. Tony, what are we? We were at 33,000 subscribers when I last checked. What are we at now? Is it 33,000?
I know we're close.
Yeah, we're close. We're pushing toward 40.
32.6.
Okay, almost 33.
Yeah.
All right. Pretty good. Exciting for this little show from KGO Radio in San Francisco. The little show
Dumb
that could...
radio people doing their show and somehow
exactly
people keep
right.
showing up. Thank you, everybody.
So cool. So we're filling in today, and Mark will be back tomorrow. But let's get right into it because this was big news over the weekend. This helicopter crash regarding the president of Iran. It crashed in a forest in between Azerbaijan and Iran, where there was an event being held. And the president of Iran, who isn't the supreme leader, but still has quite a few duties, as well as the foreign minister of Iran aboard this chopper, they get there and there's no signs of life. And he's presumed dead. So what does that mean for us? Let's talk to John Rothman, find out who this person was, because I think a lot of people don't know a lot about the president of Iran and what it means for us. John Rothman, of course, former KGO talk show host, political analyst, presidential historian, and hello, John Rothman.
And hello, Kim McAllister.
Hi, thanks for being here on short notice even.
For you, anything.
Thank you.
I do want to point out that the former president, now deceased, is dead. They have identified the bodies of both the president and the foreign minister. Yeah. And so he was the 8th president of Iran since the revolution, and only 66 years old, relatively young. And it appeared that he might well have succeeded the Grand Ayatollah. And so there's a real situation here. But I want to be crystal clear. The president of Iran is a figurehead. The president of Iran does not have substantive power. But this president of Iran, Raisi, was someone who was highly regarded. Now, the other interesting thing is the helicopter he went down in was a U.S.-made Bell 212. It's an older helicopter, which was gifted to Iran during the days of the Shah. So remember that there is real isolation in terms of being able to get access to equipment. And so they do recycle everything. They reuse everything.
So this was an old helicopter. Tony and I were talking this morning, and he was saying like maybe Vietnam era.
Yes, it would have been, because remember the revolution took place essentially in 1979, and there have been no new equipment flows. It is also interesting to know that Raisi was a hardliner. He was known as the Butcher of Tehran because he really went after protesters, demonstrators, anybody who dissented. And so he was viewed as a hardliner. He was a Holocaust denier, as was one of his predecessors. And he also has stated very clearly, when you hear the chant from the river to the sea, that they believe it means the elimination of Israel completely.
So I was reading a little bit about him, and he started, before he was elected president, he was a judge and known for squashing dissent. And this is a country that's had protests about being able to speak freely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right. He was a hardliner. And that's why he was in line to succeed the Grand Ayatollah. And remember, the Grand Ayatollah is the one who has real power. If the Grand Ayatollah doesn't like you as president, you're gone. You're out.
Yeah.
And so the man who evidently is succeeding, and we don't know a lot about him, is currently the vice president, and he will become president. But there will be a new election that will be held, I'm told, within 90 days. But you never know in situations like this.
Do they have real elections in Iran? I mean, would they be considered free and fair? Or is it just all a sham kind of deal?
Well, let's put it this way. The Grand Ayatollah has to approve your candidacy. Okay. So if you wanted to run and you opposed government policies, you would not be permitted to run.
No.
So it is an interesting situation because it's not a free and democratic operation. Although Iranian officials argue, well, they have a choice. There are 3 or 4 candidates and you can choose who you want, but they are government approved candidates. Okay. So it's hardly limiting. I don't think it will really affect what happens in terms of Iranian relations with the world. It's very clear that the Iranian government hardline is going to be preserved, that the allies of Iran, from Hezbollah to Islamic Jihad, to Hamas, to the Houthis, all will continue to receive the aid that they have received previously, because it's not the president of Iran who is in charge of that, Yeah. So my feeling is there will now be conspiracy theories. Already we're hearing suggestions that the Israelis did it, which of course is not true. This was a bad move. I was talking to my wife. We had a very good friend whose son died in a helicopter crash in Hawaii when he shouldn't have been flying. It was a dark night and very windy. Right. You have the case of so many different cases of helicopter flights, which we know are dangerous. What was sad in this case is that not only was the president there, but the foreign minister was there. And we've seen the foreign minister of Iran on a number of television programs recently. So it was a blow. And of course, nobody expects the helicopter to crash.
No, it was a foggy forest. They were coming back from an event in Azerbaijan. And apparently it was, yes, look at that thick fog. And the chopper goes down. It's interesting because weather conditions would indicate that this was, weather-caused accident type of situation. But my first thought was, oh, somebody took that chopper down too. And I don't know why my mind went there, except for that there were 8 very important people in Iran aboard this chopper. So it was the president, it was the foreign minister, and it was, they don't list all the rest of them, but we know there were high-ranking government officials in Iran. And so I don't know does it mean anything, do you think, for the war with Israel and Hamas?
No. Not a thing.
Okay.
Because it all comes out of the Grand Ayatollah's positions. And the president is a figurehead. And the foreign minister is essentially a figurehead as well. Although this foreign minister appeared on television here in the United States, was at the United Nations. But they have no real impact on policy. Remember, Iran is not a democracy. Mm-hmm. Now, what interested me is the number of Iranians who evidently rejoiced at the death of the president. Really? Of course, they're all Iranians who are in exile. That is, they are not in Iran. But these positions are clear. And the Israeli government has been completely silent. But the American government felt compelled to say they had nothing to do with the crash of the helicopter.
Right.
And so the United States...
Because of people like me who immediately thought, oh, I wonder if we did that. Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the conspiracy theorists. Mm-hmm. But in terms of American-Iranian relations, I expect there will be no measurable change or shift in policy.
I saw a picture of, they were, the outpouring of people who are mourning the loss. And among them, Vladimir Putin, who called Raisi a friend to Russia. So
he had just been on a state visit. There's the picture. Thank you very much. They had just been together in Moscow. And so there you have it.
Yeah. And that's who we're looking at. I mean, that's who he was aligned with. Putin, right? I don't know who else, the South Koreans, whomever. Yeah.
Not South Koreans, North Korea.
My apologies. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, those are the folks that are coming forward to express sympathy. So,
it's the access of evil in this generation. Yeah. And it's Iran, it's North Korea, it's Hamas, it's the various radical states. So this is a very sad moment. By the way, no one wishes any leader to die in this fashion, even if you oppose them. But these are the peculiarities of living in our society today.
How old is Iran's supreme leader?
He's now, I believe, in his 80s.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now they have to be trying to find someone that is capable of filling in for him, and
he will name his successor. Right. I'm absolutely sure.
Wow.
But remember, it is the Islamic Republic, meaning that it is a nation founded on Islam. And there he is, the Grand Ayatollah, who succeeded Khomeini, who was, of course, the nemesis of the United States over many presidencies. So this is the reality of Iran. Now, I must tell you that I have very good friends from Iran who go back and forth, because you can do that, who would love to see this government overthrown. And you may remember that there was talk of the United States participating in it, but we're very cautious. And the reason is that in 1953, when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, the green light was given for a overthrow of the government of Iran and the Shah being restored to power. And that was all done at the behest of British Petroleum, because the Iranian government under Mossadegh, who was the prime minister, had nationalized the oil. And so it was a concerted move in which John Foster Dulles, our then Secretary of State, was directly involved. So we have to be cautious. We cannot. That was an attempted coup which worked because the Shah was restored to power. And of course, the anger of the Iranian people boiled over in 1978 and 79 with the overthrow of the Shah. Yep. By the way, the anti-Khomeini forces, or the anti-Islamic forces today, are rallied around the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi, who I had the opportunity to interview on KGO when he wrote a book.
Oh, wow.
But they have very little support. But I can tell you, it's an interesting thing. If somebody says they are from Persia, they are supporters of the old Shahist regime. If somebody says they're from Iran, well, that puts them in a political context as well. So there are interesting shifts in terms of language as well.
When you look at the recent protest in Iran, I mean, for a time, there were all over the country, there were people rising up, and they were dealt with harshly. And I don't know whose policy was that, the president or the supreme leaders, or
the president who just died was one of the prosecutors. They went after these people tooth and nail.
I'm reading on CNN that there's some people think there's a possibility here that this upcoming presidential election in Iran, which now has to be completed within 50 days, could present the opportunity for a moderate or some to come in. You say no,
because you cannot run without the approval of the Grand Ayatollah.
Right.
So say, Kim, you and I wanted to run for president of Iran. The fact that you are an extremist would make you you're a woman. I'm sorry, that wouldn't work at all. I point that out because people who are gay, or people who are women, or people who are not seen as conforming to the Islamic revolution don't run. I, on the other hand, would be a perfect candidate, right?
Yeah.
I have no deficits. Oh, wait, I do. I'm a Jew.
No, you won't work either. We're both out. That's it. All right, let's turn to, because while you're here, I thought I would throw it at you, the Trump trial, or the hush money trial in New York, is kind of winding down. And today on the stand, Michael Cohen wrapping up his testimony, and he admitted to stealing from the Trump organization. What do you make of that? Does it? Well, no, I guess not. I mean, no.
It's part of his charm. But I want to focus people. There's only one question which should be central, and that is, did Donald Trump authorize hush money to be paid in this situation? And then were the books doctored? And who was responsible? Because this really is a business records case.
Yeah.
This is a question of falsification. By the way, it's not illegal to pay off a porn star.
No.
You want to keep somebody quiet, you can do it. But if business records were altered, so I would suggest, if I were involved in this case, I would say Michael Cohen's credibility doesn't really matter. What matters is the records, the actual records. And Weisselberg should be brought into court and have to testify. But of course, he is now on Rikers Island, so he's in jail himself. You know, it's interesting. Can you think of any of the major Trump participants who have not gone to jail? But the real issue for me in all of this is an elevated question. Is it right to have a former president or a president of the United States whose standards do not meet the high standards of what should be the office of the president of the United States?
Well, anybody, I think, who's a thinking person would say no.
Well, of course, there's one other element. I just want to throw this in. Donald Trump repeatedly says that all of this is a conspiracy by Joe Biden, that it's Joe Biden's Justice Department that has brought these various cases. And all I can tell you is that is absolutely not true and impossible, because they're brought by state court, by federal court. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Yeah. But remember, the business records case is what really is at stake here. Ultimately, the question of Trump's involvement in January 6th, what he did or did not do, will also be critical. But whether or not we get to that before the election is going to be really, really important.
So I'm reading this article in the New York Times that Mark actually sent me last night, and it talked about the advantages that the prosecutors have in this case. And there's two things that really stood out that may give them the advantage here. One of them is that the law in New York holds a defendant accountable even when he doesn't carry out the crime himself, as long as he intentionally aids it. So they use the example here when they seated a jury, and they asked the jury, could you accept the idea that a husband who hired a hitman to kill his wife was guilty of her murder because the husband didn't kill the trigger, but aided in that death? And so the people that said yes, you know, those were the ones that, so in that same way, maybe he didn't do the deed, but he aided in the deed. And the other is they could invoke this decision from 2016, precedent, that upheld a conviction that a defendant who didn't handle or approve the false records in question, but was reasonably foreseeable that his actions would have resulted in the filing of false records. So those two things kind of are the you know, on the side of the prosecution when it comes to legal maneuvers that could give them the edge.
Yeah, and that's the question. Look, the question is not whether Donald Trump had an affair with Stormy Daniels. He clearly did, even though he
says he didn't. But I mean, we all know.
We know that it happened.
Yeah.
But the question is, did Donald Trump participate in and condone the payoff of money, and not just the money, but then the altering of records, business records, in order to figure out how to do it all? And that's where it all comes down to. That's where the rubber hits the road. And I would suggest to you that I can't tell you what the jury will do, nor can I tell you how the trial will turn out. But I can tell you that's where it ought to be focused. And the fact is there anybody listening to the sound of my voice who doesn't believe that Donald Trump knew all about Stormy Daniels, that he didn't collude and have Michael Cohen serve as his agent in order to shut Stormy Daniels up? And by the way, maybe he was doing it to protect Melania, but it doesn't matter.
No.
If he did it, he's guilty. Will the jury be instructed that way by the judge? That's the other thing I'm going to be interested in. How does the judge instruct the jury? And frankly, Michael Cohen is as big a sleaze as Donald Trump.
Yep.
But nonetheless, the question is, who is the one who was responsible for all of this? And if Michael Cohen was acting at the behest of Donald Trump, so be it. By the way, are you surprised at the accusation that Michael Cohen might have skimmed a few bucks off the top?
He admitted it. 30 grand, I think, is what he said he stole.
I know,
and are you more likely to believe someone who gets on the stand and says, yeah, I did that. I took the money. I did all these bad things, who is, he's not trying to cover up anything he did. He's laying it all out there. Yeah. And from what I've read, it's about how much the jury will believe of his testimony.
Right. Now, can I ask you a question? Do you believe that Donald Trump is being persecuted?
Oh, no.
Or prosecuted?
Prosecuted, absolutely.
Okay. But I'm telling you, I use those two words, and some of you have heard me use them before, because that's the divide in this country.
Yeah.
The people who believe that Donald Trump is being persecuted. And let me point out to you that key members of the Republican leadership, including the Speaker of the House of Representatives, including members of the United States Senate, went to this New York trial and either went into the courtroom or were outside the courtroom and suggest that Donald Trump is being persecuted.
Yeah.
It is so abhorrent to me that members of Congress would allow themselves to be used in this fashion. It's parroting, by the way, exactly what Donald Trump was forbidden to say publicly with that gag order. I guess when I boil it all down, it's Donald Trump's complete contempt for justice. But more than that, it is that the Republican Party would have the same sort of contempt. They don't understand. They don't know the facts of the case. They're just proceeding from the premises Donald Trump has that he is being persecuted. I object to that profoundly. And if you look at the members of the House who are standing there, these are people sworn to uphold the law. And what are they doing? So I find that aspect of this distressing. So may I just tell you, I segment this into various parts. One is the question of whether Donald Trump was in fact altering records to protect himself. Mm-hmm. Number two, does Michael Cohen and his record keeping, which was pretty good, does that have any impact on the case? Number three, why would the Speaker of the House of Representatives come down from Washington, D.C. to stand up for Donald Trump? And who are these Republican members of Congress who went into the courtroom, sat there, and now believe that Donald Trump is being persecuted? I mean, I don't know whether Trump will be found innocent or guilty, but if you ask me, he's pretty sleazy.
Do you think that they're accusing the Biden administration of weaponizing the Department of Justice because that's what they would do?
Well, there's no question that the Department of Justice has not been weaponized.
True.
But it's also true that Donald Trump intends to weaponize the Justice Department.
So of course he would think that someone else is, because that's what he would do, right?
And he says it publicly.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people have read the some of the inside information on this idea of reforming the government. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite books is a book called The Plot That Failed. It is by a former Nixon administration official who points out that that was Nixon's intent in a second term, thwarted only by Watergate.
Yeah.
And I would suggest to all of our listeners that you really listen to what Donald Trump says he will do in a second term. By the way, that includes extending pardons to people who were involved in January 6th. Thank you for putting it up. It's very important. Richard Nathan was a good friend of mine, Dick Nathan, and his book, The Plot That Failed, Nixon and the Administrative Presidency, it's a carbon copy of what the Trump people are now proposing. Dick Nathan died a few years ago. I interviewed him, by the way, on KGO because I wanted people to understand what that plot was. And thank God it failed. And I hope the plot now will fail as well.
Last question for you. The California uh, Republican Party held their whiz-bang convention in Burlingame over the weekend. We
Sure
know
did.
Kristi Noem was there. Anything come out of that convention that surprised you or that's noteworthy that we should talk about?
I will just reflect on how sad I am. I attended Republican convention after Republican convention here in California. I was the youngest member of the Republican State Central Committee. The Republican Party today is not the Republican Party that I grew up in, where there were real battles between liberals and conservatives over the question of life versus choice, if you will. There were real debates and substantive discussions. And the reason the Republican Party holds not a single statewide elective office, why the Republican Party is a minority in the Senate and in the Assembly, why the Republican Party cannot even field legitimate candidates, is because it has failed the people of California so completely. May I tell you, my ardent wish is that when Donald Trump goes down to the crashing defeat that he deserves so richly, that the Republican Party will have to rebuild from the ground up and will once again become a viable, important part of the political process. It's a shame. And those of you who know that I've talked about this, I gave a talk some years ago in the Tonga room of the Fairmont Hotel here in San Francisco to the Republican County Committee. And the title of my talk was The Rise, Fall, and Demise of the Republican Party in San Francisco. But I talked in a broader sense about California. It is the ultimate tragedy that we have descended to this depth. And may I, as long as I'm at it, think about who Donald Trump put on the court and the fact that he said he changed the court. But then think about this. I want to talk about two people who are not Trump appointees, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. Clarence Thomas clearly has a bias. His wife Ginny's record is clear. Right. And Sam Alito blames his wife for hoisting a flag after January 6th upside down.
Always the wife's fault. Yeah.
Well, I blame everything on my wife. No, wait, be careful. I better say that softly. She might hear me in the other room. But I do think that it is clear that neither Thomas nor Alito will recuse themselves from decisions in which they clearly have a bias. Right. And I think that's shocking. I would remind people that when Richard Nixon's case went to the Supreme Court, my old friend Bill Rehnquist, who subsequently, of course, became Chief Justice, he was then an Associate Justice, Bill Rehnquist recused himself in the case of Nixon.
It's not the way it's done anymore, though. Those were the old days when there was honor and decency, and there were a reason that we put these people up on a pedestal. Right. Now, we've, that the pedestal has come crashing down, we realize the honor and the dignity has been gone for a while, and we're just now catching on.
But it's sad because, one of the most stellar moments in American politics, even though I disagreed with the court decision, was when Al Gore conceded the presidency in 2000 after the election. And the Supreme Court made the ruling that on a 5-4 vote that put George Bush into the White House. And Al Gore, in a speech which was one of the greatest speeches in American history, said, I don't agree with the decision of the court, but I accept it. And I think the tragedy now is, will people accept a court so biased? And when the question of presidential immunity comes for a decision, and that will be in a few weeks, and I hope you'll have me back for that. It could be that only two members of the court, Alito and Thomas, will uphold absolute presidential immunity. What a tragedy that would be. I urge people, all you have to do is go back and read what Chief Justice Berger said in the United States versus Richard Nixon, when he said very clearly, no one is above the law. And I think that is the fundamental issue which we will have to wrestle with. In the meantime, we just continue to observe. And as soon as you're through with me, although I'm going to listen to your next segment, I'm going to turn on the trial because I want to hear what's going on. But it appears from what I'm hearing that we will not have final arguments until next week and that this is going to drag a little bit longer. And then we just have to wait and see.
You said something interesting about the Supreme Court a few minutes ago, which is, will people accept the Supreme Court's decisions? And just thinking about that, it's like we have a choice. Either we accept it or we have a massive cleavage in this country, and there is fighting and there's protests in the street, and it turns into something ugly and crazy. So what are the real choices here? If people don't accept the rule of the Supreme Court, what does it look like?
That's what Donald Trump is saying, though. He's saying he won't pledge that there will be no violence if the court rules against him. He is making that threat. It is a threat to American democracy. And that is what I find so disturbing. You can go back and hear what former presidents have said when they agree or disagree, but all of them accept certain framework in which our democracy functions. Yeah. Donald Trump would violate that framework. He would violate that confidence. And that's what makes Donald Trump so dangerous to American democracy.
If we disregard our system of government, we're in real trouble.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that would really be the doom of American democracy. My hope, and I know I come on here to give you analysis, not to be a partisan, but if this were a Democrat pulling the kind of stuff that Donald Trump has been pulling, I would be saying the same thing. My loyalty is to the Constitution of the United States and to the idea of the integrity of the American system. If we don't have faith in the American system, then the hope that America has offered generations, not to mention the world, will be doomed. So I'm watching not only what happens in the New York courtroom, I'm really waiting to see when the Supreme Court renders a verdict, which will come in either the end of this month or in June when they go when they take their summer recess. I want to see how they rule on absolute presidential immunity, and I want to see the lineup of the court. So we have some very dramatic days ahead. And may I tell you, the interesting thing is that's what makes being on the podcast with you, but also doing my Around the Political World with John Rothman every day, so interesting.
And you have your The Voice as well.
Yes, I am now doing a 10 minutes, roughly a day, for The Voice of San Francisco. And it has been fascinating to comment on local issues. There it is, The Voice of San Francisco with John Rothman. And the podcast is up and running. There's a section when you go to the website and it says podcasts. They're also, by the way, putting on my Around the Political World segment as well.
Easy to find then.
We're just having a wonderful, there it is.
Yay.
We're just having a wonderful time. And you know, the only thing I regret, no interaction. So I am going to participate in Mark Thompson's social gathering.
June Swoon, absolutely.
And I will be there to answer any questions, to take any criticism, and to have that kind of interactive experience, which frankly was the heart and soul of KGO. So I'm very
John
happy.
Rothman, thank you for being here and jumping in to talk about the president of Iran and the Trump trial in New York. We'll see you on Wednesday, so we get a double dose of John Rothman this week. Thank you so much.
And may I say, I am delighted, and it's always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to appear with Kim McAllister.
Thank you, John Rothman. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Tony, we're at the fork in the roads now. We can go for news or we can go right to True Crime Corner. What do you choose?
Well, I see Courtney in the lobby, so I say we do True Crime.
True Crime Corner it is. Fire it up, sir. Here we go.
1 second.
Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
Or Kim McAllister in for Mark Thompson today.
Even better.
Courtney, hi. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
How was the weekend?
It was amazing, actually. We went to Ojai. I don't know if Mark teased that on Friday. Yeah, we went to Ojai, and it was just so relaxing, and it was very, very nice to get away. Yeah.
Okay. You sound a little bit echoey. Are you in studio?
I'm not. Oh no.
No. It's okay. Just wondering.
It's good.
Tony says it's good. You're all good. You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Without Mark, I'm relegated to just.
That's okay. So the true crime story today is going to be a surprise to me because I don't know exactly what you're talking about, which kind of makes it more exciting. So what do you have?
Oh, good. Well, so many people have sent really great ideas for the segment. And so I'm working on several stories, but the one that I was going to cover today is actually a 3-part series that's on Apple TV, and it's called Hollywood Con Queen. Have you heard of this?
No.
Yeah. So I heard about it on a show, and someone was talking about how they had binged it, and I watched it and thought, wow, this is such an incredible story. And it's so bizarre because the story is about somebody who was impersonating or pretending to be women, female executives in Hollywood who are incredibly influential, whether filmmakers or producers or actors and actresses. And they had built this entire network of sort of cons for people that work as contract help. So photographers, up and coming emerging actors and talent. And it was incredible. The person who conducted this crime started the crime in 2013. And he was arrested by the FBI, or they were arrested by the FBI in 2020. So over 7 years, hundreds of people were conned out of about $2 million.
Wow. What was the con? What was the con? The big con?
Okay. Yes, I will tell you. So if you go to the next visual, so nobody knows who this person is. They are impersonating really important women executives in Hollywood. And they were getting in touch with various contract talent, as I mentioned, through like their IMDb's. And they were asking the contract talent to work on different projects. And most of it felt very like some of the contract work that they would already do. So similar kind of asks, similar kind of contracts that they were signing. But every single one of these projects would take the talent and bring them to Jakarta. And in that, the talent that was going, remember, photographers, cinematographers, editors, actors, they were having to put up some of their own money. So they would fly to Jakarta, they would pay for all the local travel. And all of this was a big network of money that was being taken by this con person, this mastermind, which is probably really generous for this person, because in the end, they're not very sophisticated in this con that they were conducting. But certainly they took advantage of a couple of things, right? They took advantage of a power position. So impersonating these women of power that these contract workers were hoping to work with. They also were intimidating the contract workers, very much like, this is your one big opportunity. This is a huge effort or initiative, whether it's film or television. This is your big break. Using language like that was intimidating and also very leading for that contract talent. And during COVID, actually, is probably when this person was making their most money, because they would have the talent fork over money for like virtual training sessions, like whether it was actors having to get ready for a martial arts role. And they would enroll them with all these different like Zoom training classes, and all that money that these not very well-known actors were paying into was money that was actually going to this con person. But it really, in the end, wasn't about the money for this person. It was about taking advantage of people and the manipulation of people. And ultimately, after conducting this for more than almost 10 years, and hurting hundreds and hundreds of people, the scam amounted to $2 million, which is a lot of money, but not in the sense of some of the larger crimes, right, where you're talking about tens to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I'll walk you through. Now, the person that was conducting this crime was actually found out by a woman that was hired by Amy Pascal. Her name is Nicole Kotsianas, and she was a private investigator. And so Amy Pascal calls Nicole and hires her to figure out who is impersonating her, because people are reporting incidences of this Amy Pascal impersonator calling and fictitiously hiring people. And Nicole finds a person online, and his name is Gavin, and he's living in the UK, and he goes by the handle Pure Bites. So if you go down a couple of visuals, there's some visuals of him as Pure Bites. And so Nicole is on to this guy.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Now, ultimately, how she first figures out who Pure Bites is she starts to look at who is registering the domains of these fictitious sites that people are being driven to, like amypascal.com, right? And that was registered by someone in Thailand. And when she got a hold of him, he said, oh, my friend Gavin asked me to register this because he didn't want to use his credit card. Gavin runs Pure Bites. And then as she's looking at Pure Bites, she's seeing people call Gavin by different names, Hargo and by Gavin and Gabind. And so he had all these different pseudonyms. But ultimately, based on where she thought that he was from and some of the other information that was coming up on social, she was able to get a name, which was Hargo Bind Tahil Rahmani. Yep. And it's crazy because she had actually, Nicole, and this is a photo shoot that the Hargo Bind had done with Paul Hansen. He's a very famous photographer who does a lot of celebrity shoots. And Hargo Bind really wanted to be a celebrity. And so at the time, he's calling himself Gavin. He convinced Paul to do this huge shoot for him so he could get PR for Pure Bites. All the while, he's stealing money from these contract workers. And in fact, never pays Paul for this session, despite getting his information for the wires and making it seem like work was being done to pay Paul for this. And I actually think these photos ended up in a Vanity Fair spread, which was a spread about, the finding the criminal activity of Hargo Bind and not the original intention of the use of these. Yeah. So it starts to unravel. So Nicole figures out who he is through his social, through these domains that are bought. And at the same time that Nicole is working on this, a man named Scott Johnson from The Hollywood Reporter, who's an investigative journalist, there he is getting wind of somebody ripping people off, of somebody impersonating these important women in Hollywood and taking their money. And so he's doing some investigations. And if you go down, he writes an article about what he terms as the con queen of Hollywood, calling this person queen because this person was impersonating the women. Once the story gets published, someone reaches out to Scott and says, I know who this person is. He's been doing this in Jakarta for a long time. So at the same time that Nicole, the private investigator for Amy Pascal, figures out who Hargo Bind is through social, Scott figures out who he is through this information that comes out of Jakarta. So at the same time, they find out who he is. If you're watching, that's a picture of Nicole, and she's holding up a small little diary with a little mermaid on it.
Looks like a little kid's diary.
It is. And the funny part about that and why I'm mentioning it is she was on a phone call with the FBI and she was like looking for something to take notes in. And this was the only thing for her. So the entire case is written out in her daughter's diary.
How funny.
But ultimately, Scott forms a relationship with Hargo Bind, and he's on the run and nobody can find him. And Scott watches a Zoom that Hargo Bind is on, and through Google Earth, he figures out where Hargo Bind is based on the city that is behind him in the Zoom. And so Scott, the investigative reporter from the Hollywood, or the investigative journalist from the Hollywood Reporter, goes to where Hargo Bind is, which was in the UK at the time, and forms a relationship with him. And so, yeah, Tony, if you go down to the last visual, you'll see this is one of these, like, I don't know what you call them, like FaceTime calls that they were having, where basically Hargo Bind was talking about all of the crimes that he had perpetrated.
So she didn't represent herself as a reporter. She kind of went undercover to befriend him?
Well, Nicole ultimately was working with the FBI directly as a private investigator. But yes, Scott Johnson kind of went to him and said, I want to be your friend. I am a reporter. He said, I'm writing a book about this. And I think the way that he positioned it as it's a book, I think was in my mind, was very much what Hargobind was looking for, which was like pseudo celebrity and kind of a recognition of it. Hargobind, who you're looking at right now, if you're watching this, who is the Hollywood con queen. He attributes all of this to a very difficult childhood. That he grew up in a difficult household. He recognized that he was gay at a very early age. That was not something that his parents were supportive of, although I believe he did have a good relationship with his father. He did not with his mother, and he did not with his sisters. And they ended up disowning him because of his malicious and fraudulent activity from a very young age. But he really looks at himself as the victim in all of this, and that he was trying to create relationships with the victims. And he actually victim blames a lot, saying that, nobody was forced to do any of this. And he wasn't in front of them holding a gun, making them do it. But he was in many ways, because it was a manipulation of the death of their career. Yeah. Right. And so in that, he really was forcing their hand. But
it drives me crazy when people, I understand that you come from a tough family, or maybe you didn't feel loved as a child or what have you. But at some point, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. We all grow up and we look back and we go, you know what? What's behind me sucked. But now I have a choice to move forward. So to blame everyone else, I mean, that shows the kind of person.
No, exactly. Yeah. And he does that. He does that in every conversation that he has with Scott. And he's arrested by the FBI in Manchester in 2020, and he's been in prison in the UK, or in jail in the UK from since then. I believe they extradited him to the US. I believe that in 2023 the UK government agreed to extradite him here for crimes obviously that he conducted here. What's crazy is that Nicole, who is the private investigator hired by Amy Pascal, she went to the FBI early and flagged this issue, but she did not have a name. She did not have Hargobind, Tahil Rahmani. She just had hundreds of people being conned out of what at the time was, I think, just over $1 million. And the FBI said, listen, we don't have enough time to do this. Like, we don't have enough bandwidth. I know. And it's not a big enough crime. But when she found the name, they realized that he had been on an FBI watch list for years because he had called in bomb threats to government buildings in the US and to media buildings in the US, like the E building and I believe some of the studios. So in fact, he had been conducting crimes, lying, cheating, intimidating people for years. And so it all sort of came together in 2020. Yeah, it's a crazy story. I say that I thought that the 3-part series was done well. I thought it could have been a 1-part series.
It's a little too long.
Very transparent, yeah. But I did think it was really interesting, and Scott does a really great job about telling the story. So, and
we saw this with this story that you just talked about. And also in a previous story, you mentioned the guy that was finally caught when he ordered prosciutto, right? Yeah. I mean, these elaborate hoaxes go on for years and years and years. And it's shocking to me that no one catches on sooner.
I know, isn't it? And you think about the 2 people who caught him, right? Mm-hmm. It was a private investigator hired by Amy Pascal, and she could have been hired by other executives. She's just the one. Amy Pascal is mentioned in the Apple show, and then a reporter from the Hollywood Reporter, like a journalist from the Hollywood Reporter. It was in fact none of the U.S. government. It was these 2 people.
No. And if they hadn't have done the legwork and the investigative work, this guy would still be doing what he's doing.
He would still be doing what he's doing. And like I suppose by virtue of like having fewer people that he was scamming and not scamming them for lots and lots of money. I mean, granted, yes, $50,000 is a lot of money. I'm not downplaying that, but
right.
I think that because of that, he was staying under the radar for some time, right? Because from what I understand, he started in about 2013 with this particular con. So yeah, it's really incredible. It is, and you're right. It's about blaming everybody else but himself. And the third part of the series really starts with that. And you know that it's going to be an hour long. Everybody else did stuff to me, and that's why I hurt other people. Right? And a justification of that.
So is he under arrest now? Yes,
he's under arrest. He's in prison, from what I understand. What I couldn't figure out, a better journalist would have come.
No.
But I don't know if they extradited him. Like from what I was reading, it's like, yes, okay, in 2023. In June of 2023, the UK government agreed to send him to the US, but I don't know if he's here. So
if that happened or not. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the penalty is for that type of scam that goes on for so long. Like how, I mean, I guess you pay, you repay people if you can with whatever money they recover. But at this point, going on for so many years, good luck.
Yeah, it was weird too. Yeah, no, exactly. And there were other things that I'm sort of not bringing up because they are really dark, but there was sexual stuff and other things that he was making people do on Zoom and things. I mean, people were hurt monetarily, threatened, hurt, sexually. It was just like a lot of this. If you unpack it even more than the show does, again, probably relates back to this power play.
In a way, like actors thinking they're auditioning in a way, but doing sexual stuff. Yeah. Ugh.
Exactly.
Creepy.
Yeah. I have to imagine. Yeah. I don't know. It's really
imagine that feeling of power that he had making people do things like puppets.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also pulling the rug from them. Like there's one story of these two photographers, a couple, and they land in Jakarta and they've paid $5,000 for their tickets. And then suddenly invoices just start coming at them for local transportation. So now you're in Jakarta, you're not sure if this is real, you think it's real, and now you have thousands of dollars just being sort of shoved in your face through these invoices.
Whoa.
And now you're kind of wondering how to pay them and if you should, meaning that he would get you to this remote part of the world and then continue to take money from you when you further felt helpless. But yeah, it is a crazy story, and it is a wonderful thing that he is no longer doing this to people. So
yeah. Sayonara, sucker, as we say here on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. What's sad is like, oh yeah, exactly. No, but what's sad is he probably got what he wanted, right? He got a special on Apple.
The notoriety.
Like all these other things that were created about this story and podcast. So, and now the Mark Thompson Show, which really is
the pinnacle, the highlight. Yes. Exactly. When you make it on the Mark Thompson Show, everyone's talking about you. So that's what it is. So. Courtney, you are so awesome. Thank you for coming on this week and bringing us yet another fascinating story of true crime.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And it's always so fun. And I always love getting to chat with you. So
I love it too. I saw Lori posted in the chat that it really irks her that your name, here it is. It really irks the crap out of me, she said, that Courtney's name is not in the title of this segment. We may have to stage an uprising. I mean, it may have to happen.
From Lori's lips to Mark's ears. Because I know, I agree. It's everything. Yeah, everything is with Mark. But no, that's very sweet. I mean, I'm so lucky to be on. And I think that maybe I can wear him down. And wearing him down is probably my only strategy.
I like it. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next Monday. We have a guest next Monday, I think.
Yes. Well, he's actually coming in June.
Oh, okay.
A friend of the family who has a true crime show, and this crime happened just outside of his hometown. But yeah, we had to push him, but he's great. And yeah, Mark doesn't like the murder stuff. Not that I like it per se,
sure,
but he's really interested in some of these crimes and cons more as a story. Not obviously in people that are being hurt, but so. Yeah, we'll see. But I really appreciate you having me on. And
thank you for coming.
And you asked such great questions. So
well, thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, Mark's like busy on Instagram while I'm usually doing my segment.
We'll see you next Monday. Courtney, everybody, Mark's better half. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, that was a good story. And available apparently on Apple TV. So look at us go. Let's do some news, Tony. How about that? We haven't done it yet, and I think we've been remiss. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards. Former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen is admitting he stole from the Trump organization. Yeah, Cohen is making this admission that he stole $30,000 from the company while on the stand today in Trump's hush money case in New York City. Cohen, the prosecutor's key witness, who they say was behind the alleged payments to Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump in 2006. Iran state media is confirming the death of President Ebrahim Raisi. A helicopter carrying Raisi and 8 other people, including Iran's foreign minister, crashed Sunday afternoon in the mountain province east of Azerbaijan. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said intelligence officials have told him there is no evidence here of foul play. In Iran, the president is the second highest ranking official following the supreme leader. And as we heard John Rothman say earlier, he doesn't feel it's going to make a big political difference in this country. The top Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee is calling on President Biden to replace the chair of the FDIC. This after reports of a toxic workplace environment at the bank regulator under Chairman Martin Gruenberg. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown saying in a statement there must be fundamental changes at this agency after he reviewed an independent report. Brown called on President Biden to immediately nominate a new chair without delay. The corruption trial of New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez resumes today, with federal prosecutors focusing on the Egyptian connection. Prosecutors are taking a deep dive into how Menendez allegedly used his position as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to help a New Jersey business tycoon land a monopoly deal with Egypt. They claim the veteran Democrat was bribed with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and, of course, gold bars in his wife Nadine's locked closet. They were found. Red Lobster is filing for bankruptcy. The Florida-based casual dining giant filed for voluntary Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They say they plan to remain open even as they are closing locations across the U.S. The popular chain had previously announced plans to close 99 locations as it deals with its financial problems, The person responsible for San Francisco's tourism efforts is calling it quits. Yeah, San Francisco Travel Association CEO Scott Beck resigned out of the blue last week for personal reasons just after 7 months on the job. Like many other cities around the nation, San Francisco's seeing visitor numbers rebound since the pandemic. More than 23 million people visited San Francisco last year. It's more than a 5% increase in the city from 2022 as far as tourism, but Mr. Beck is stepping down. President Biden coming to Los Angeles. The president will be joined by former President Barack Obama for a fundraising event happening on June 15th. The exact location of this fundraiser has yet to be announced, but organizers say it will feature a discussion between President Biden, former President Obama, moderated by late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. Celebrities like George Clooney and Julia Roberts all said to be attending this event. As a matter of fact, I keep getting emails about how I could be the winner and be flown to Los Angeles to attend this event. Yeah, if only I would donate. Republicans around California are feeling confident that their party is moving in the right direction in the Golden State at this last weekend's GOP convention in beautiful Burlingame. Numerous Republicans said they hope to gain some seats in Congress and help swing California, but GOP officials say they are making strides in numerous races, from local school boards to the San Francisco mayor's race as well. This live stream portal that was linking the city of New York and Dublin is now back open. It had to be shut down because of some risque and bad behavior, but now it's back open. There's the risque behavior. Yeah. The visual art exhibit is called The Portal. It features a pair of installations that each have a giant screen and a video camera, one next to the Flatiron Building in New York, the other in Ireland's capital city, Dublin. It was shut down last week following what the Dublin City Council called inappropriate behavior by a small majority of people. That includes flashing the tatas to the portal. I think this is an OnlyFans model, that we can call that a model, the OnlyFans situation, from New York flashing the boobs toward Dublin. And that's when they shut it down for a while. But now it's back open. We'll see if we can have nice things. We'll see if maybe people treat it with a little more dignity and respect, and use it for its intended purpose, which is to actually connect with people, not show ugly pictures or flash, indecent pictures at each other. Oh, people, come on. This report is sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in beautiful Livermore. Live music at Tenuta Vineyards. We've got the Memorial Day event coming up. It's going to be great. They have 29 varietals of wine, including the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red and the Hey, Which One of You is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio. You can call Rich at 925-699-4576, or you can email him, rich at Tenuta, Tenuta, tenutavineyard.com. And in your voice message or in your email, you say, smash it with your iron rod. And that will get you 10% off of your wine order or your event tickets or whatever it is going on at the winery. 10% across the board. 20% discount on orders of cases of wine. So again, smash it with your iron rod is what you need to know. And the phone number again out at Livermore, at Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore is 925-699-4576. Our thanks to Tenuta Vineyards for sponsoring the Mark Thompson Show for the month of May. We appreciate that. All right, I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Kim, you're muted.
That's a problem. There you go. Wait. All I said was it's the Mark Thompson Show without Mark Thompson today, so that's all right. As you guys can tell. Again, Mark Thompson will be back tomorrow, but let's jump into some other stories because we've got some good ones. As a matter of fact, now Tony didn't like this story, but I find it amusing. This is Trump being caught in a lie, perhaps, or maybe not remembering something he's done. This happened in Minnesota, where when he lost that state in the last election, he said he was never coming back. If I lose the state, he said, I'm never coming back here. And maybe he meant it as a joke, but he was asked about it in a recent interview, and he didn't remember. Check it out.
Week. I think at one point you vowed never to come back to Minnesota after you lost the state in 2020. Is this a signal that you think you have a realistic chance to win the state of Minnesota in 2024?
Well, I never said I'd never come back. I never even thought of that. I thought I won in 2020 easily.
He actually did say it at a rally in Duluth in September of 2020 and appeared to be joking.
I lose Minnesota, I'm never coming back. I don't care. I'm never coming back.
Trump lost Minnesota by 7 points in 2020. Dinner this.
Yeah, he forgot. He forgot, but it's always embarrassing to be caught like that. Speaking of Trump, he was at an NRA convention and said something that I think should kind of raise the hairs on the backs of our necks. He floats the idea of a 3-term presidency at the NRA convention. He said, are we going to be considered 3-term or 2-term? It's a violation of the U.S. Constitution to serve more than 2 terms. Them's the rules. You've already served 1, so you're only eligible for 1 more. But he says no. He said, FDR, 16 years, almost 16 years, he was 4 terms. Are we going to be considered 3-term or 2-term? This is at a speech in Dallas, the NRA convention. And so then people in the crowd start yelling, 3, 3. So what does that mean? Do you think that if you're elected this next election, that you're eligible to serve 2 terms and not 1? Well, after Roosevelt's 4th term, the 22nd Amendment was enacted, which limits a president to serving 2 terms in office. That's it. It's a little disconcerting that he thinks he'll be eligible for 3. Does that mean he's not leaving after 4 years? Does that mean he's going to try to parlay another one? Is he thinking it's 2 back-to-back terms? Did he not read the Constitution? I have so many questions. That should be, number 1, either he doesn't know the rules. Number 2, he doesn't care about the rules. And either of those things are concerning to me. Yeah. No. President Biden also was speaking this weekend, and he had some interesting words to say. And I don't know what I think about this. He was at a civil rights event, and he said, what would Trump have done if the Capitol riots had been led by Black Americans? Well, I mean, if it was for the same reason, if it was to support his presidency, probably nothing. A better question would be, I guess if it weren't the Capitol riots and it was some other situation and maybe Black Americans swept into the Capitol, then the response might have been different. But he says this, President Biden, and there's kind of this quiet murmuring in the crowd. And I think people don't know what to make of it. He said, let me ask you, this is at the NAACP dinner in Detroit. What do you think he, meaning Trump, would have done on January 6th if Black Americans had stormed the Capitol? So according to this article in The Guardian, there's a collective gasp, there's murmuring, about 5,000 guests. The president says, no, I'm serious. What do you think? I can only imagine. And so I was thinking about it. What would Trump have done if they had been people of color that stormed the Capitol? And I think as long as it was on his behalf, it would have been the same result. But I don't think that's what President Biden meant. I think he meant in a different context with people of color, right? And that they would have been hurt. Kind of an interesting way to say it, though. I don't know. President Biden talked a lot about his own record during this speech, but he kept coming back to Trump and the threat that Trump poses to democracy. On that, I can say we agree. So he talked about the fact that he put the first African-American Supreme Court justice on the bench, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and he said, let me ask you, who do you think he'll put on the Supreme Court? You think he'll pick anybody that has a brain? That was a good question. We talked earlier on the show a few days ago about Rudy Giuliani hiding out from Arizona officials that were camped out at the building where he lives in New York, and they were denied entry by the person at the desk who said they couldn't accept any legal summons on behalf of Rudy Giuliani, and they were not permitted to let anyone up to his apartment or penthouse or wherever he lives. And then last night, Rudy Giuliani, he gets all cocky, and posts this message on X or wherever. And he says, if they can't get me by tonight at midnight, meaning yesterday, then it's a no-go. Then they have to, do this whole thing all over again. But he's at his 80th birthday party in Florida. And I don't know if the Arizona officials saw that and took it as a challenge. Boom. They go in and they serve him with this indictment notification at his 80th birthday party in front of everyone. His own fault for hiding out the entire time. He gets the summons at his 80th birthday party in connection with the alleged conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election results in Arizona. Done. So he was bragging just a half hour before, if they don't get me, they have to restart the whole process. And here it is, served. You have been served at the last minute. Love it. He could have just taken the papers and avoided the public embarrassment at his own apartment. But he chose to not do this. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy. I have to say that. Let's talk about another follow-up story. The alleged attacker of Steve Buscemi, arrested. He's now being held on $50,000 bond. Buscemi jumped in New York, had to go to the hospital for an eye injury and bruising to the face. This guy just beat him. Buscemi is 66. And this man was arrested 3 days after his picture was released, and is facing assault charges now. The accused man, there he is, 50 years old, arraigned on Saturday. The judge set the bail at $50,000. The criminal complaint alleges that he punched 2 people at the time. This whole attack caught on surveillance tape as well. So it doesn't look good for him. Still don't know the motive of that attack. Speaking of attackers and follow-up stories, last week on Friday, I mentioned that Paul Pelosi's attacker, the man who busted into his home and smacked his head with a hammer, he had been charged to 3 decades, 30 years. That's 3 decades for, everyone. He'd been sentenced to 30 years behind bars. Well, now they have to redo it because apparently the federal judge handling the case committed an error by not giving David DePop, the opportunity to speak at his sentencing hearing. So he will have another sentencing hearing Tuesday, May 28th. The sentence may be amended from the 30-year sentence that he was given in federal court last week, all because he wasn't allowed the chance to speak. Interesting. The court documents say this error will almost certainly result in a remand of the case to the trial court for further action. I don't know why the judge would have not done that. It seems so common. It was, they say, the court's responsibility, personally, to ask Mr. DePop if he wanted to speak. As the court did not do so, it committed a clear error. So this 44-year-old man from Richmond, who broke into the Pelosi home in San Francisco and beat Mr. Pelosi with a hammer and has been convicted of such, now has another chance to speak on his own behalf and maybe have the sentence reduced. We'll see what happens. We'll keep on top of that. He is still facing other charges as well in Superior Court of California. That's a whole separate case that is set to begin later this month. So we'll be hearing more about him. In Disneyland, the costume characters are unionized, ready for fighting back. It's been going on for a while. They've finally voted to unionize. They needed to. They aren't paid enough. During the pandemic, I think it definitely showed that they needed some organization. So, yeah, unionizing at Disneyland. I don't think if they go on strike, they'll be able to wear their outfits. They have to keep those at Disneyland, but that would be quite a sight. Yeah, but they're going to be, they are now members of a union. There you go. The Julian Assange extradition proceedings continue in the UK. It seems like this has been going on an awfully long time. The newest is that Assange will be able to appeal his extradition, to the United States. That, according to London's High Court, they say he does have the right to fight to challenge his extradition here to America. Outside the court, you can see people cheering for this decision. They're rallying in his defense outside of the courtroom. Some people are shouting, "Drop the case." Others saying, "Let him go, Joe," referencing Joe Biden. They say, his lawyers for Julian Assange, that he should not accept the assurances given by U.S. prosecutors that he will be able to rely on the rights and protections under the First Amendment of free speech. They're saying, don't buy it. If extradited, according to Assange's lawyers, he could be discriminated against on the basis of his nationality because he's an Australian-born foreign national, which they say means that he isn't due the same rights in America. So we'll see. A date hasn't been set yet for the next hearing. Of course, Assange is wanted here in America for espionage charges connected to his organization's publication of thousands of classified documents and diplomatic cables in 2010 and 2011 as part of the whole WikiLeaks scandal. He faces spending the rest of his life in jail if he is convicted of that. So we'll see if he gets extradited or not. I don't know if you watched the baseball game over the weekend, Tony, but at a Dodgers game, Mookie Betts blasts a foul ball and it went into the stands and smacked an 8-year-old child in the eye. It was a pretty tense moment there for a minute. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to get hit with foul balls. They try to put nets up.
They put that net in, but sometimes it goes over it.
Sometimes it does, and that's what happened here. This little boy, Nathan Sanchez, got smacked right in the eye. As soon as the ball hits him, he's screaming, "My eye, my eye!" They traveled to the game. He was hoping to catch a foul ball. This boy, he had his mitt. He was ready. But in this moment, they were sitting mid-level behind home plate and first base when the ball headed directly toward his seat and smacked him right in the eyeball. Ricocheted off his right eye, and then the ball disappears into the crowd. So they have medical personnel check him. Looks like he's going to be okay. He returned to the stands, and listen to this. This is finally some good news. Someone who ended up with the ball returned it to him and gave it to him and said, "This is yours." How sweet is that? They're hoping that Betts will sign the ball that hit him. It would seem like the least that they could do. The protective netting Tony was talking about has prevented injuries from foul balls, but it doesn't obviously fully eliminate that risk. But it's always that moment where everyone collectively holds their breath like, oh God, did that just happen? Man, horrible. All right, let's do a little bit of law and disorder, Tony.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Well, in the history of law and disorder here on the Mark Thompson Show, this has to take the cake. This man tried to steal a Los Angeles police vehicle with a police officer still inside. That's not going to work. This happened in downtown Los Angeles early Sunday morning when the suspect stole an LAPD patrol vehicle with the officer still inside and then caused a multi-car pileup. Happened at 3:30 in the morning. There was a female officer conducting security detail at 12th and Figueroa. At some point, the suspect approached her, got into the vehicle, and then just drove off. The cop is still in there. Armed, I would say. Unfortunately, the officer was ejected from the SUV during the crash, fell onto the roadway. The suspect sped away, first collided with at least 2 vehicles, then crashed into a pole, then tried to run from the scene, but was quickly apprehended. Several people, including the officers, sustained injuries. Looks like no life-threatening injuries, so everyone's going to be okay eventually. They had the whole area around 8th and Figueroa shut down for several hours. But that takes a lot of cojones to try to steal a car with a cop still inside of it. Crazy. What in the world? It's coming too. All right. Speaking of which, another crazy moment, and this is happening more and more with United States postal workers getting robbed while they're on the job. This one caught on video. This postal service employee was robbed at gunpoint in broad daylight. It happened in Dublin, in the East Bay. The carrier was putting some items in a mailbox about 4:30 in the afternoon when a masked man approached her, and that was followed by a second person involved in this robbery, and the video is pretty frightening. So, broad daylight, this happened in the afternoon hours. The safety, you have to wonder if the postal carriers aren't safe. Are we going to then have to go to the post office to pick up our mail if they can't ensure the safety of people? Check out this video. Here comes one of the robbers. There she goes. He's accosting her at gunpoint. Now there's a second person coming up, pointing a gun to her head to take the things that she has. Incredibly frightening. I'm telling you. And so if this is the case where we can't have our postal carriers feel like they're safe in neighborhoods, they're just sitting ducks out there with all the things people are going to take from them, then is it going to be like a situation where the businesses close down in Oakland? Are the postal carriers going to say, all right, well, you're just going to have to pick up your mail then? Well, we'll do it a different way, in a place where we can feel safe. You're going to have to come prove who you are. We'll give you your mail in person because we're being attacked in neighborhoods too much. That is Law and Disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Well, from Law and Disorder right back into news, because there are some fresh stories to tell you about. This is news here on The Mark Thompson Show. Former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen admitting he stole $30,000 from the Trump Organization. Back on the stand today in the former president's hush money trial in New York City. Cohen is the prosecutor's key witness to say he was behind the alleged payments to adult actress Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about an alleged sexual encounter with Trump in 2006. 8 people are now dead in Houston as the city continues to clean up following severe storms last week. Fire officials say the latest victim died as the result of carbon monoxide poisoning. City and state police now enforcing an exclusion zone set up downtown with some streets barricaded due to the risk of falling glass from high rises. Not a good situation. The United States is monitoring the investigation into the death of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was asked during a news conference today if he's concerned that Iran will try to blame the United States or Israel for this accident. Austin stressed the United States had no part to play in this crash. President Biden slamming the International Criminal Court prosecutor for seeking arrest warrants against Israeli leaders for the war in Gaza. President Biden called the move by the ICC outrageous, claiming there's no equivalent between Israel and Hamas and stressing that the United States will always stand with Israel. The ICC is seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas leaders as well. There's a new lawsuit claiming that a Pennsylvania teenager had to be resuscitated in March when he went into cardiac arrest after drinking Panera Bread's charged lemonade. The suit comes 2 weeks after the restaurant announced it would discontinue this controversial drink. It's at least the fourth lawsuit filed against Panera over this beverage, which has been blamed for 2 deaths and 1 woman's permanent health issue. This is crazy. This charged lemonade full of massive amounts of caffeine. And again, now we have another lawsuit over this. Someone had to be brought back to life afterward. Mayor Eric Adams is considering revoking the key to New York City that he gave Sean Diddy Combs after video surfaced of Combs assaulting his ex-girlfriend. Mayor Adams said the video is deeply disturbing and it is a far cry from the celebration in Times Square last year. The mayor said he and his city hall team will decide what steps they'll take next. But at this point, it looks like the key to the city will be rescinded. That massive container ship that caused the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore will be removed from the channel within days. That's what Maryland Governor Wes Moore told NBC's Meet the Press. The ship had been sitting in the middle of the Patapsco River since late March when it collided with the bridge. The crew still aboard as well. There are millions of people in the central U.S. in the path of severe thunderstorms this week. The storms are expected to start as early as this afternoon in parts of Wyoming and Colorado, and then move toward Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. Cities like Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis, and Milwaukee could see severe weather this week as well. So pretty scary for some folks. In the Southern California area, a man from Orange County was charged today with shooting a fellow UPS driver to death. 46-year-old Ray.
Kim, we lost you. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm here.
Sorry.
Hello.
Okay, we lost you for a second. We're good. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about the one UPS driver shooting another one to death. Right. The shooting happened last Thursday in Irvine. Police say the 2 men knew each other. They still don't know exactly what the motive is. There were 9 Southern California convenience stores robbed within a matter of hours. Beginning at 9:15 Sunday night, a 7-Eleven was robbed, followed by 6 more 7-Elevens, a Shell Market, a Circle K. The stores in Norwalk, Anaheim, Fullerton, Gardena, and Los Angeles. The last heist happened at 2:15 this morning. Now investigators from multiple agencies believe the robberies are related, but not likely performed by the same crew. So they don't exactly know. Did you hear about this Southern California grocer selling a luxury pineapple for a lot of money? It's a Ruby Glow pineapple selling for $395 at Melissa's Produce. Apparently it's very special. Only a few thousand of these pinkish red designer pineapples are produced each year by Fresh Del Monte. The Ruby Glow pineapple, the result of 15 years of research and experimentation. Not the drinks. There's the Ruby Glow. Look at that. $400 almost for a pineapple. Born to be the legend. I'm sure it's tasty, but it's not $400 tasty. No thanks. I'm sure there's someone who just has to try it. They'll probably sell out, I would think. $395. With tax, you're looking at $400, right? Again, only a few thousand of the Ruby Glow. Would you buy one for $400, a pineapple? What do you think, Tony? Are you serving it at your next barbecue? No, I'm not serving it either. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. It is a little bit of heaven in your cup. As a matter of fact, I have the ginger mint tea in my cup this morning. Absolutely amazing. And just for being a Mark Thompson Show viewer/listener, you get an exclusive 10% off. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Check it out. And get your 10% off at checkout. Enter Mark T, all together, no spaces. Mark T is your special code that you can enter for your 10% off at the end. They have these tea bags that are made of an organic material that have no plastic, that I've been ordering the tea bags for the loose leaf tea they sell, and it's the only place I can find them without any plastic or any type of thing in them that I don't want. So yeah, there they are right there. The tea filter bags, you get 100 of them. So there you go. It is, again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Best coffee Mark has ever tasted. I am now hooked on their tea, and I think you'll like what they have to offer as well. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Everything is going extremely well.
What he's got going here is a situation.
You people are crazy.
You just don't get it, really. You don't.
I cannot believe it.
It's fantastic.
Thompson, party of four.
What are you doing?
You cannot say you love your country.
Sayonara, sucker. Good day, sir.
Why are you yelling?
Seriously, what the
So a couple more updates for you. The prosecution rests. So there's that pineapple. The prosecution rests in the Trump hush money trial in New York. The judge asked the jurors to step outside while lawyers from both sides went up to the bench to talk before the defense witness, Robert Costello, is brought into court. But again, the prosecution rests at this point, and so now we move on there. Another story that caught my attention today is this about IVF. Now, it looks to me like Republicans are having to distance themselves from making IVF illegal in certain states. I think it was Alabama where there was a ruling that made IVF clinics have to get rid of the whatever type of genetic material was stored there because they weren't going to do IVF any longer. Well, now Republican Senators Ted Cruz and Katie Britt have announced they are introducing legislation to protect legal access to in vitro fertilization, or IVF. This again after the Alabama Supreme Court ruling that embryos created by this treatment are children, which created all kinds of chaos. So Senators Cruz and Britt say they will unveil this bill to clear up confusion and misinformation spread by that ruling that has alarmed people that worry that they could lose access to this type of procedure, this fertility procedure, and possibly then not have the chance for children. They say to address these concerns, we will introduce a bill today to ensure IVF access is legally protected nationwide. The legislation would require, as a condition of receiving federal Medicaid funding, that the states don't prohibit IVF. This may be a way for people upset about the Republican stance on reproductive health, to be assured that they'll still have some access to these fertility treatments. They say the bill doesn't impede states from setting up health and safety standards to govern IVF, or compel any individual or organization to provide IVF against its wishes or beliefs. It just ensures that access to IVF is fully protected by federal law, and at this time, there's no such federal law in place. So, they say IVF is profoundly pro-family, and they say 2% of births in the United States result from this process. There are other bills being put forth by Democratic senators, Duckworth, Klobuchar, Baldwin, Murray. They have their own legislation winding through, but it has been blocked by Republican Cindy Hyde Smith from Mississippi. So it did not get unanimous consent on the Senate floor. So they're duking it out over IVF. All right, how about a little bit of stories from the sky? It's going to happen. I know it will, Tony. I have faith in you. I believe.
Sorry, my mouse jumped.
It's okay. We'll get it.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
Speaking of snakes on a plane, airport security officers in Miami found a bit of a surprise recently. A bag of snakes hidden in a passenger's pants. What? Oh my gosh. Can you imagine putting a bag of snakes in your drawers? No, thank you. According to this post on X, the Transportation Security Administration officers at Miami International found a small bag of snakes hidden in a passenger's trousers April 26th at a checkpoint. The snakes were turned over to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. No. People try to do these things. They try to smuggle animals. First of all, how weird does that look when you go through the x-ray machine to see these slithering things moving around in a bag in your pants? But also, like, what if they can bite through the bag? And how close to your parts are they? I don't know. No thanks. This, by the way, is how snakes get on a plane. And that would be a giant no thank you. At SFO, this happened a couple weeks ago. The jet bridge that people walk on to get to the plane collapsed. That was not a good scene. Yeah, right after the flight landed, they were hooking up the jet bridge. They thought it was all ready to go. The flight from Hawaii had arrived at the gate, and the metal struts on the bridge failed. The jetway for SFO's Gate A1 experienced what they call a structural failure. This happened May 2nd, after the arrival of a Hawaiian Airlines flight. The spokesperson for SFO, Doug Yakel, telling SF Gate there were no injuries due to this failure. The flight came in from Kahului, arrived at SFO, and that all the passengers, he said, safely deplaned, but the aircraft was damaged because of the failure of the walkway here. They were working on repairs before returning the aircraft to service, and that boarding bridge is out of service for repairs. They're still going to do an investigation as to what happened there. You don't hear that very often, where the jet bridge just collapses. They had to make, speaking of Hawaii, an emergency landing, this one at LAX, because of an issue that happened on a flight from Hawaii to Los Angeles. It was a Honolulu to Los Angeles flight that had some trouble, and things didn't go as planned. It's not exactly known why they had to make an emergency landing at LAX. The plane did land successfully. It looks like the thought was, although this isn't confirmed, but if you can look at the picture there, that it had an issue with the front landing gear, that maybe it didn't pop into place correctly. So there were a bunch of emergency vehicles that had to respond out here to this landing. It's unclear if anyone was injured. Yeah, that's another one. There was a fight over a seat. This one, the video is crazy. This happened on a flight en route to SFO. The Taiwanese airline EVA Air headed to San Francisco, and apparently the fight begins over a seat change. So a guy thinks a seat is available and goes to sit in it, and someone else says, you can't have that seat, it's not your seat. And look at that, punches are thrown, things get ugly, it's crazy. 3 flight attendants intervened to try to break apart these passengers. This happened on May 7th. About 3 hours into this 11-hour flight, a passenger just decided to go ahead and change seats because of discomfort caused by a neighbor who was coughing. But the seat he tried to take was previously occupied, and this leads to this argument and this physical altercation aboard the plane. where things get ugly. EVA Air says they have a zero tolerance policy toward incidents of passenger nuisance, is what they call it. That's great. The flight attendants were able to separate the passengers. The flight didn't make any detours. It arrived at SFO 21 minutes early, as a matter of fact. They said they did find a record of medical evaluation being made on several passengers because of this fight. But can you imagine, like this, you're so upset over a seat, you just, whatever happened to the days of, you go ask the flight attendant, hey, there's a guy in my seat. And the flight attendant walks up and says, excuse me, sir, the seat belongs to someone else. May I see your boarding pass? And the problem is solved when the flight attendant says, oh, you're assigned to this seat. And the man says, well, there's someone coughing next to me. And this flight attendant says, well, let me see if I can find you something else. But for now, please return to your seat. And if I have anything else available, I'll be sure to help you. Right? Is that not the way you would handle it? But no, we get this, the yelling, the punches thrown, the anger aboard the plane, affecting everyone on the whole flight. These poor flight attendants, what they have to go through. Passenger nuisance is right. I am telling you what, crazy. Next story about a wheels up landing. And boy, did this work out better than I would have thought it could. This plane made a successful wheels up landing, emergency landing in Australia. It had been circling the airport for hours and hours and hours. There were 2 passengers and a pilot aboard this plane. It was forced to land without the landing gear after a mechanical failure at Newcastle Airport in Australia's New South Wales. It's a Beech B200 Super King. It was circling the airport for hours, burning up its fuel before what they say, making a textbook wheels up emergency landing. I mean, that thing came in, for not having landing gear, pretty smooth. You can see some sparks flying, but overall, not bad. The footage that Tony just showed shows the plane approaching the runway without its landing gear activated before touching down and then skidding along the tarmac until coming to a stop. The superintendent at the airport praised the 53-year-old pilot for executing a successful landing, saying nobody was injured and the passengers had even been able to drive home themselves. Look at that. No one even had to go to the hospital to be checked out. Yeah, you can see the sparks flying just a little bit from the scraping on the ground. But overall, I mean, pretty good, right? I'm sure it didn't feel good if you were inside the plane. Those guiding the plane down in the control room burst into applause when they saw that it had landed safely. It had been scheduled, that plane, to make a 26-minute flight from Newcastle to Port Macquarie, about 248 miles north of Sydney. So it wasn't even that big of a flight, but for whatever mechanical failure reason, this is what happened. So they had to burn up all that fuel. And that is Stories from the Sky. I have faith, Tony. It's coming.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
A couple more stories to throw your way. There is a situation unfolding in the East Bay where a hiker and a dog have been missing now for 3 full days. Yeah, this is crazy. 3 days. You think, can they survive? I mean, the weather is not that bad in the Bay Area, but 3 days, that's a long time to be missing. The pair went on a long hike in the wilderness east of Sunol and south of Livermore. As of this afternoon, search teams were still looking for Alex Stetcher and his dog Apollo. Stetcher and Apollo started their hike in the Sunol Regional Wilderness Preserve Friday morning. They planned to hike all day and camp overnight, then hike to Del Val Regional Park. He was supposed to arrive at the park at a designated time on Saturday afternoon, but the person who was supposed to pick him up said he never got there. The hiker and the dog reported missing to law enforcement Saturday evening, just a little after 8 p.m. The park officials say they have now mounted a large-scale search They're using people from the East Bay Regional Park District, Alameda County Fire Department, the search and rescue units, CAL FIRE, CHP. Still, they have not been able to locate. And they knew the pathway. They knew the plan. So that's distressing. They've put out this picture of Mr. Stetcher and his dog Apollo, who's white and brown. They say he was wearing the same clothes during his hike as he is in the photograph. So he's got this kind of olive shirt and gray pants. So they're hoping that maybe if someone sees them, they'll be able to call. But at this point, they're still looking for this person and this dog. So another story. OpenAI is now accused of copying Scarlett Johansson's voice. Yes, they have pulled their chatbot because of this. The San Francisco-based artificial intelligence startup is now putting the pause on one of its chatbots after being accused of mimicking a celebrity voice. The chatbot is named Sky, and it's one of the voices heard on OpenAI's GPT platform. But the voice of Sky is apparently very similar to the voice of Scarlett Johansson. They posted on X. They are pausing the use of Sky while they look into it and address this matter. The quote is, "We have heard questions about how we chose the voices in ChatGPT, especially Sky. We're working to pause the use of Sky while we address all this. The belief is the AI voices should not deliberately mimic a celebrity's distinctive voice, according to the company, OpenAI. That Sky's voice is not supposed to be an imitation of Scarlett Johansson. It belongs to a different professional actress using her own natural speaking voice." Is this do you have the sound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's what it sounds like.
Let's hear it.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey there. It's going great. How about you? I see you're rocking an OpenAI hoodie. Nice choice. What's up with that ceiling about? Are you in a cool industry-style office or something?
Well, can you...
Yeah. You think that sounds like Scarlett Johansson? I wouldn't have called it.
Nah, not me neither. So
I mean, it doesn't not sound like her, but maybe I'm not.
Now I think it sounds like her because I was told it sounds like her.
Exactly.
You know? So
yes.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah.
I don't know. The company doesn't share the name of their voice talents that were used to create the chatbots. They do say they pay them well. They say they look for voice talent, including actors from diverse backgrounds who can speak multiple languages, a voice that feels timeless, an approachable voice that inspires trust, a warm, engaging, confidence-inspiring, charismatic voice with a rich tone, and someone who's natural and easy to listen to. What's weird is that Scarlett Johansson voiced the role of an AI virtual assistant in that movie Her in 2013. And I guess the OpenAI CEO Sam Altman referenced Her last week in some type of comment. And now we have someone accusing OpenAI of stealing Scarlett Johansson's voice, and now they have to put a pause on it. So very interesting.
Flew too close to the sun, right?
I guess they did. Well, I think we're going to see more of these things. You know, OpenAI's going to be, I don't know.
It's here. Too bad. The AI stuff is here, and it's just going to get more and more. It's not going away.
There's going to be a point where we're not going to be able to police all of it. Where the stories like this are going to just be one of a million, right? Because it is going to sound like people. So I don't know. And if it's smart enough, then it will hear, listen, and learn and absorb all the information and spit that back out at us. So how do we keep that from happening?
Can't.
You can't.
This is a genie out of the bottle thing. It's, what was it? Pandora's box is open.
Right?
That's what it is now.
Oh my God. I think this is the way it's going to be. Man. There is in San Francisco a mural opposing the war in Gaza, and it is being slammed as anti-Semitic. So this is another problem that we have in San Francisco. I mean, you could argue that it's art, and so It has its own message. The artist has a message. But this is in the Noe Valley neighborhood, and it was painted as an opposition to the war in Gaza. It has the headline, "Stop the Genocide in Gaza Now," and it shows bombs falling on piles of rubble and debris. And the bombs are painted with dollar signs and the names of U.S. arms manufacturers as well. So you'll see Lockheed Martin, you'll see Boeing on there. One of the bombs says, "Made in the USA." And then within the rubble, there are children's toys, numbers of people that have been killed in the bombings there. They do say 7,000 people kidnapped as well. There's a pair of people seen poking their heads out of the rubble right in the middle of this whole thing. And people are criticizing this. The Jewish Community Relations Council of the Bay Area, they say, with the dollar signs in particular, that it's an anti-Semitic trope. They say it depicts the tropes of blood and libel and the moneyed Jew as a blight on the neighborhood. They say it makes the Jewish people in this area feel unsafe and unwelcome. And according to the Jewish Community Relations Council of the Bay Area, they say this presence of this mural is sanctioned hate, and it's invited additional acts of anti-Semitism. They're calling on community leaders to do more than condemn this vandalism. They say they want it taken down, that they have to ensure it's quickly removed. What do you think?
Well, he also painted the dollar sign in white and blue, so...
I mean,
we know what he's doing.
An artist has their viewpoint, right?
Yeah. But, yeah, again, you know exactly why he painted it white and blue that way.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I don't know. I mean, if it was in my neighborhood and it made me feel unsafe, who am I to say that it doesn't make someone feel unsafe? I don't know. Interesting. I think they knew when they painted it that it was going to be controversial. Absolutely. And that's what you have now. So it looks like, I don't know what's going to happen, but there's calls for it to come down. I would imagine this is now going to be a new area where people protest in the middle of Noe Valley. So there you have it. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with me on the Mark Thompson Show today. Again, Mark will be back tomorrow. Huge thank you to Marilyn for contributing to the show. Thank you for being here. She says, thanks for all the info. Thank you for the super sticker. Of course, the super chat and super stickers are not only open during the show, but afterward. You'll see them posted in the comments as well. The website for The Mark Thompson Show, themarkthompsonshow.com. themarkthompsonshow.com is where the Patreon and the PayPal links live. You'll be able to find all of that there. And we thank you for crowdfunding this show and helping us keep it going. Tomorrow on the show is David K. Johnston Day. It's going to be wonderful, especially as the defense calls its witness in the Trump trial. It'll be interesting to hear what David K. Johnston has to say about what's happening here so far. Also, I plan to ask him about the whole 3-term thing and what he has to say about that.
Oh, no.
So, I know. So that's tomorrow on the Mark Thompson Show, where, again, Mark will be here.
Thompson Show.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here. Meet me on the After Party Live next. Woohoo! See you tomorrow. Thanks, Tony.
Oh.